What's your smoking lounge of choice? Is it where you feel you have a voice? The place where you can mingle, whether you're single or with a mate on a date? Do you prefer laid back and real where you can just chill? D&B is definitely a thrill. La Soya is where I get real comfortable. The home lounge brings in a crowd. I spent time in Elite, which was a treat. Cunoma, where debonair greets you at the door. Vanetti's in the back when you want to climax. Blowing smoke when you're really in the mood to sit back and relax. The smoking jacket is in a different bracket. Astute gentleman, where you are sure to make new friends. The boardroom is complete with etiquette and style. What's your smoke of choice? Do you need assistance in discovering your likes and dislikes? You'll get assistance at the door. It won't be a bore at any of these lounges and so many more. You never know what's in store. Keep an open mind as you light your cigar. You are going to a different kind of bar. Don't be surprised if you meet a movie or sports star. Cigar lounges bring us together very differently. I've met some great people consequently. Forming relationships and friendships that don't reflect negatively, we just sit back and blowing smoke. Meet the funniest people in D&B. Relax but have fun at La Soya. Go in cute but not aloof at a stoop. And really chill at Cunoma. The turn up at Vanetti's without the confetti. Enter with style and grace at the boardroom. And I might cap the night with a Betty. Who's ready? The jacket would have you leaving with the cigar stack. And that's a fact. And that is that piece.
Welcome back to the TheVisionLab podcast, in partnership with Next One Creative. I'm your host, Ryan Cuffey, alongside my co-host, Mr. Ryan Mosley. Folks, TheVisionLab is the official growth mindset podcast for all visionaries worldwide. You know what? We show mad love to the cigar community. At the end of the day, we're just two guys trying to learn as much as we can about life and about growing and about becoming the absolute best versions of ourselves. Yo, Mo. We got it going on today. We finally made it happen.
Long time coming.
Beautiful, beautiful sister of the leaf is in the building. Who we got in the lab today?
Cuff, today's guest is a native of St. Louis, Missouri, the Show Me State.
Show me?
Come on now. She is a published author, having now finished off her 7th book. She is definitely one of our favorite sisters of the leaf. Please welcome the beautiful Keya McClain to the TheVisionLab podcast.
Thank you.
Man, first of all, fire. And it's, for us here in the Metroplex, that really resonates, tremendously for us, because you're talking about all the different lounges and cigar shops across the DFW, right? Mm-hmm. Places that we've seen you at, places that we've smoked with you before at. Before we go really deep into all this, the ability to orate your thoughts and feelings on paper, where did that come from?
It really came from childhood. I always wrote. I was a what I call the undercover writer. That's what I did. That's how I released my feelings. That's how I released my emotions, things that I was going through. Was I just put it on paper. And then how I started to be more public with it was quite accidental, actually. I had enrolled my son in a writing workshop, and he was a freshman in high school. He was really shy, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for him to kind of open up a little bit. And it actually opened me up. As a result of him being a part of that workshop, I was asked to speak to this small group of people, and then the organizer of that nonprofit asked me to join his board. Okay. And as a result, one of my duties was to work the door at an open mic night. And so I remember that first night I did that, just being in awe of these people getting on stage and just spilling what I had in my own notebooks at home And I decided the very next week, I'm getting on that stage. And I've been doing it ever since. My son is 26 now, so that tells you how long I've been doing it. So
Yeah, well, I'm certainly grateful that you took that leap of faith and really started, putting yourself out there. Can you talk to the visionaries about what that process looks like? You have a talent, obviously. You spent time in your own lab crafting up all your content, all your materials, and now you have an opportunity to grab the bull by the horns and actually step out there. What was that experience like for you?
scary. Yeah, it was scary at first. I had people telling me for a long time to publish my work, put myself more out there, get out of like the small poetry lounges and try to get myself on a larger stage. And I was fearful of that.
Why?
Well, I didn't think, initially I didn't think anybody cared about what I was talking about. That was my thought initially. It wasn't until I kept going back every Friday and people were standing in line to talk to me after I recited poetry and said, I need to hear that again. You made me think about some things. I felt that. It made me emotional. All of these different things people were coming to me saying, and I had to finally just believe that what I was doing was touching other people's lives and that it was impactful. And if I could impact other people like maybe I wanted to be impacted, then I was doing something.
Somebody's always listening.
Yeah.
So you found a driver, the ability to touch other lives, speak to people that may be dealing with some of the challenges that a lot of people deal with, right? I've got a two-part question for you. What is it like to tap into your audience's emotion and be able to deliver that content, however often, you're writing, right? Mm-hmm. When you're in your own lab, are you thinking about, hey, how is my reader going to interpret this? How is this going to make them feel? What's their emotional state that I'm trying to drive them in? That's the first part of the question. Mm-hmm. The second part of the question is, I want you to kind of dispel any rumors that it's not just all cigars, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first part of the question, the answer to that is I tap into my own emotions. So once I tap into my own emotions, I know that, and not only when I do that when I'm writing, I read aloud what I'm writing. Because first of all, I know my voice, the inflection, the feeling that I'm going to put out in it. But then I think about, okay, what about the person who's not going to be able to hear me, right? And so that means I may have to change some words so that they can feel what I'm saying. And so I'll go back through and I'll read it silently. And I'll go back and I'll read it out loud. And, I want to make sure that I can touch the audience both ways, to the reader and to those that are hearing what I'm saying. So there's a lot of thought that goes through that. And it really is a process that I'm going through. As I do that. My initial book was My Words Healed My Soul. My initial thought when I wrote was that I would really be writing to women. I would really be trying to reach that particular audience because I was talking about my own personal experiences. And I didn't think that men would be able to connect to that. And I was wrong, yet again. A lot of men would tell me some of the things that I shared from my book resonated with them, whether it was because they saw their mom go through some of those things, or a sister, or just another woman in their lives, or the very thing that I'm talking about wasn't necessarily gender related. It talked about pain. It talked about life. It talked about forgiveness. So some of the men were able to connect with my story. And so I call myself more of a storyteller than I do a poet, because I tell stories.
I'm curious in the sense of, obviously we've known you for a while now, and again, thank you we finally made this happen.
Yes.
When it comes to, you mentioned you going in your personal lab, what does that process look like for you? Like, do you cut off the phones? Do you tell everybody, like, hey, look, I'm off the grid for a couple hours? Like, how does that look? Like, when we go record, like, our wives know, like, hey, we're finna go record. Don't message us unless the house is burning down. Like, what does that look like for you?
So for me, my phone goes on D&D. and only my favorites can get through. So my mom, my nephew, and my son are the only 3 people that can get through, because I figure if they're calling, it's something important, right? But I do this thing. I'm going to share this with you. I have never shared this with anybody, but I'm going to share this with y'all.
Love it.
So I do this thing where I'm sitting on the bed. I start on the bed, and I kind of like slide down to the floor. And so that's my process. That's how I start. And then once I get there, sometimes I have index cards. And I start writing on the index cards, like what topics I want to write about, like where I'm at in that moment. And then I just start writing. And it's like freestyle at first. It's just like, these are my thoughts, right? And then I'm just getting it down. And then I go back through and I'm like, okay, now let me kind of put it together.
Start shaping.
Yeah, let me put it together more. So I'm old school. You know, we all probably around the same age. So, you know, back in the day when you wrote, you kind of had to write your outline, and then, you know, so I still write like that, even in poetic form. That's how I write. That's how I prepare my story.
So you mentioned the word pain, which is very interesting because your question was what I was going to ask too. It's kind of like what that process in your own lab looks like.
And I asked that because, you know, people ask us all the time, like, how do y'all do that, or why did y'all, like, so it's like, okay, and I tell them all the time, yeah, it's a process. And I tell them, it's like, look, go episode 10, tell you everything you need to know. But I'm just, you know, from a true poet, a true author, like, what does that look like for her? That's what I was curious about.
Yeah, and it's, you know, great question. But the other thing that you said earlier was the word pain. I think a lot of us leverage pain as a driver because it's so paramount in everybody's life, right? There's a challenge, there's pain, there's overcoming whatever adversity. How do you leverage or draw from pain?
That's actually a great question, because I tell people I wouldn't be where I am without pain. Every move that I've made, everything that I've been able to succeed at in life originated from pain. I probably would have never wrote and published a book if I didn't lose my best friend and brother. I probably wouldn't have never said I'm going to go out and speak about some of the things that I've endured and gone through in life if I didn't lose my favorite uncle that was more like a father to me. So pain has definitely been the initiator for everything that I've started to do, because through my pain, rather than sit in it and sulk in it and allow it to, you know, drive me crazy and go into this depression, it actually does the opposite for me. So it drives me to do something more positive. It drives me to do something that maybe the person that I may have lost in that moment may have said, you know, you need to do this, Keya. Don't give up on your dreams, or don't quit. It's the very thing that drove me. When I lost my uncle, I was going to college and I quit. But before I even quit, I was in the room with him when he died. And his last breath to me was finish school, take care of Corey, get married, you know, get you a good guy. And I quit. But it kept ringing in my ear. You weren't supposed to quit. He asked you not to quit on his deathbed. And I went back and I finished. So pain has always been pivotal in any process I've had in life. It's always been the thing that made me pivot.
Yeah.
I know you got a question, but allow me to say thank you to somebody who has stood by us from jump. We're 120 some episodes in now. Thank you to Edwina Brown and the family at Blowing Smoke Cigar Lounge. Congrats on the new location in Lancaster, EB. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're anywhere in the southern part of the Metroplex, get to Blowing Smoke Cigar Lounge. A great staff, first of all. It's great people. You'll be greeted when you walk in. They're going to take care of you. The atmosphere is great. Make sure you get to Blowing Smoke Cigar Lounge. New locations in Lancaster. EB, don't kill me. I think the address is 1604 North I-35 in Lancaster, Texas. And I apologize if I got the address incorrect. I know it's 1604. But go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I also want to give a big shout out to Jeff Davis over at Astute Gentleman, which is the location that we're actually recording today.
Shout out to OG.
If you're in Carrollton, Farmers Branch, Dallas area, make sure you stop by, get your hair cut, open bar, and get a cigar. Fantastic location. Also has a number of events through Smokers Wild, and shout out to my sister of the leaf, Miss Keya McClain, because we are now both in Smokers Wild. So I want to give a big shout out to them as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
You know, we're talking about the process. We're talking about pain. I want to scale it back a little bit and talk to visionaries that are actually interested in becoming an author or really exposing their work.
Mm-hmm.
What was that process like for you? So, you know, you've written a book and you've written a number of different sonnets or you know, content, but how did you go about the process of getting it published?
So all of my books are self-published.
Yes.
Beyond the 2 that I co-authored with. I believe in owning my own shit.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Say it. Come on now. Don't answer anybody.
I believe in owning it, and I believe in having control over where it goes and, you know, what that looks like for me. So when I first started, I have a really good friend in St. Louis who at that time had already published about 4 or 5 books. And I went to him for just some mentoring and some coaching, and he basically kind of gave me the blueprint on, you know, what I needed to do. I remember as he was kind of coaching me through that process, remembering like, you know, I think I could do something like this for other people. And so one of the other things that I do that I don't even know if you guys are aware of is I'm a self-publishing coach. So I work with other potential authors on how to self-publish their book. I primarily focus on how to turn your book into a business with them, because so many people that I've seen self-publish, they self-publish and the book sits on their living room table and it never moves beyond that. It's especially hard when you're self-published because you don't have all that backing from, you know, the larger publishing companies. However, you have to work it. And so that's what I really primarily work with my clients on. The whole process of self-publishing, but also the potential that you can turn this into a business, because being published really can bring business to you. Speaking engagements, teaching opportunities, so many other things if you create that lane for yourself.
The platform.
Yeah.
So how does one get self-published, or how does one become self-published?
Well, it actually is easier than people think. You know, you write your book, and I use Amazon as my platform. And so it really walks you through the whole process. It can be confusing, you know, when you start, because you have to, all of your margins, everything has to be perfect. When you have whoever you hire as your graphic designer to do your cover and your binder and all of that has to be intact.
How many back and forth? How many times you go back and forth when it came to the graphics and the artwork and all that?
Oh, a lot. Because, you know, you have this idea in your head and then you're trying to translate that to somebody. And so there is some back and forth until they can get it. Now, I will say this because I think it's important to say and to acknowledge, you know, my big brother Jeff there with Cigar Chronicles. Funny thing is, I'm sitting in here smoking one night. I'm going back and forth with my graphic designer. Like, this is probably our 20th back and forth. I'm like, I'm not liking this cover. I show it to Jeff. I'm like, Jeff, like, what do you think about this? He's like, nah. We walk right in there. He goes to his computer. He plays around. He does. So this cover, Jeff did.
Let's see it.
And so
Show it to the camera.
And so, yeah, he went on there on this computer and he put it together, and this is what we got. And it really was what I had envisioned in my mind to have. So I think, you know, also talking to people that you trust, you know,
Yes.
about those things, because
Can't share with everybody.
it's hard. You know, you can't share all that with everybody. That's a difficult thing. So I felt comfortable sharing that with him, and I'm glad I did.
No, it's fire. And he always does some amazing graphic and artistry work. Speaking of Cigar Chronicles, right? Obviously you're a cigar smoker. When did you pick up the stick, and when did you fall in love with the leaf?
Initially, I picked up the stick about 20 years ago. I was invited out with some girlfriends who had met an older gentleman, and he asked her to come to the cigar lounge and bring friends. And of course, I walked in the humidor and I picked up a damn Maduro that was strong and almost knocked me out. And I didn't know how to smoke it.
I was gonna say, did you inhale it?
I inhaled.
Oh, no.
And I got this head rush so quick, right? And it was funny because one of the guys that was with him came over to me and he was like, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" And I said, "Nah." He said, "Well, let me take you back in the humidor." He took me back in the humidor, and I can't even remember which stick it was, but I know it was a Connecticut, and I liked it. I was actually surprised at how much I liked it. At that time, I was smoking Black and Milds. So, yeah. So, it was a huge difference.
I've been there.
It was a huge difference. And so, none of my girlfriends liked it. And there weren't really many cigar lounges in St. Louis. There were maybe about 2. And they were very upscale. And I was young and broke. So, I didn't, I would go in every now and then. And, but I just didn't feel comfortable at that time. And so, and then shortly after that, I got married. My husband at the time didn't like me smoking cigars, so I laid off of him for a while. My next spouse will have to like me smoking cigars. But I just started back smoking again, and it was through that pain. And that's why I say it always kind of happens. Something that we think is meant or intended to take us out really is not the intent behind it. I started hanging out at this cigar lounge in St. Louis. I just bought me a stick, sat on the patio outside, and these guys started talking to me. And they really kind of groomed me. They taught me so many different things about cigars. I started hanging out with them. They had a small group that they had formed, and I joined that group and just kind of hung out and sat around them and learned, as much as I could about the leaf. And then when I came to Dallas, Dallas was booming. Like, the cigar community here is so much different than St. Louis. It's small in St. Louis, and it's not as welcoming as it is here.
So you just mentioned it because I was going to ask you later on, but you went ahead and opened the door. So at some point, you had I guess you call it a fork in the road moment, if you will. You packed up everything and moved from St. Louis to Dallas. What was that fork in the road moment, and when did you know internally, like, Keya, it's time to make a move?
And why Dallas?
So the fork in the road moment was when I got divorced a second time, and I had some health issues, and my stepfather had just passed. So I had these series of things that happened. I also started a nonprofit in St. Louis called Empower to Be. And my goal behind Empower to Be was to inspire, empower, and educate women on a number of different things. And I was having all these different events, and I just didn't feel connected to the city anymore. And I woke up one day, and I said, I think I'm going to go to Phoenix. So I planned this 7-day sabbatical trip by myself to Phoenix, and I went to Phoenix, and I absolutely loved it. And my mom said, "Can you please not go to Phoenix? You don't have any family or friends or anybody there. Like, if something happened to you, it would take me a little longer to find out." And I had already lived in Dallas before. I actually lived in Dallas back in 2001, 2002. And so I still loved it. I visited often, still had some friends here. And within 30 days, I sold everything at my house or gave it away and hit the highway.
When did you know it was going to work this time?
About 3 months after I got here.
What happened?
It wasn't initially.
Well, that's pretty quick, though. I mean, within
Yeah.
90 to 120 days is a...
It wasn't initially because I had a few plans lined up, and those plans fell through. And so it started off a little rough because I came without a job. I had actually quit my job in St. Louis. So I went completely self-employed.
Yeah, you burned the boats.
For about 2 years, I was self-employed. And so then when I got to Dallas, it was like I ran through my money, my savings so quick, not expecting that to happen. Like, it happened so fast. And I was like, oh, I got to go back to work, but within 3 months I was working again. So, and it wasn't just the fact that I was working again. It felt like home for me here. It felt like home. And I have friends that have been here 10 or 15 years, and they were like, how did you know about something in Fort Worth? I was like, because I drove there. How did you know about, I just started driving around, and I started learning the area and getting out and meeting people.
Speaking of people,
There you go.
I want to give a big shout
Come on now.
out to a company that's been behind us since day one, and that's Crystal and Tim over at Class A Vodka. Guys, we talk about it every single week. There's a reason why they're a sponsor to the show.
The reason we stand on the product.
Phenomenal vodka, phenomenal spirit and product. Be on the lookout for some major moves for them this fall. So big shout out to Tim and Crystal over at Class A Vodka. Y'all keep doing your thing. We stand behind your product 100%.
Class in every glass is the slogan.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you visit their Instagram page. Have you had Class A?
I have.
Yes. Is it not? What is your take?
It is all that. It is all that.
Yeah, they definitely working on some big
Yes.
things, and we look forward to supporting them as they roll these new things out for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So, it's the Vision Lab, right? You start down the show with poetry, you put your thoughts and your feelings and express your pain through words and poetry, and just the using the word as a form of therapy, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to what you initially envisioned when you started this, has that changed from where you started to where you are now?
From the first book to now?
Yeah, because you come a long way. Like, you went from being afraid to even go back and forth to the same place to now, we see you all the time.
Yeah.
So when you said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, you had a thought or a vision. You was like, okay, I can do this. I can make this happen here. Has that changed from where you? Essentially, let me redo this. Right, I'm butchering this question. Has the original vision you had for yourself, has it changed, evolved? Have you had to tweak it? Like, how have things turned?
It's definitely evolved. Okay. I didn't see me being where I am now at all. I knew when I wrote the first book there would be another part. Okay. So on the first book, if you look at the bottom here, and actually my graphic designer and I both talked about this. He asked me, was I going to be writing another book? And so at the bottom it says a collection of healing poetic expression. This was before I had even written the second book. But I knew that another book was coming. I didn't know how many more. So I had already basically claimed it on this book. Mm-hmm. So did I know that it was going to be 7 books later? Absolutely not. It's at the point now where this could really be my full-time thing, where I'm speaking, because I have different genres of writing that I do also. And so there's different things and different topics that I can talk about. There's different places I can go and present. And that is something that has even grown for me over the years. COVID kind of slowed me up because I was speaking at colleges and corporations and different places. The door was open for me in a lot of more spaces. And so I think there is plenty of opportunity for me to continue to grow in this, unlike what I saw when I published this first book.
As a writer, we understand your process of getting into your lab, right? Coming up with the ideas, putting it on paper, organizing it, getting it to flow both audibly and, as you read it. As you are putting all this together, and obviously, like you had just mentioned, like things have evolved and they've grown. I'd really like to understand better from your perspective when you're writing. Do you have so your first collection, you said, look, I know that there's going to be other ones. Do you manifest? Do you do affirmations internally to get in that right state?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've been doing vision boards for many years. I have my affirmation book and I practice that daily. I'm a heavy meditator, and I really believe that everything that is coming to me are all things that I've manifested in my life through my thoughts, through my words, and through my writing. And so it's powerful. I believe it to be true. And so now that same fearful person that wrote her first book, years ago really doesn't exist anymore.
So let me piggyback off of that. When you find yourself in a challenge, do you self-speak?
Absolutely. I'll give you an example. So I got up on Saturday morning, and it just started off rough. As soon as I woke up, it was rough, and I started just speaking to myself. And one of the things that I'll do when I kind of feel that way is I look in the mirror, I dance, I speak to myself. You got this, And a lot of times people don't realize how powerful it is for you to speak life into you.
Yes.
Like, that's a very powerful thing. It's something that we all should be practicing, because so many of us rely on something outward to give us something when we're the ones that hold it anyway.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that, because I'm not even going to call it a rough day, because it wasn't a rough day, but there were certain puzzle pieces that, you're forced to kind of figure out how to do. But it was that self-speak. And I love the fact that you integrate movement, because we know that by moving, that's energy, right? And now you're creating the energy that you want to absorb, or that you want to come into your life. So that's big. I may even start doing that too. And I was telling my wife months ago, it's hard to be upset when you're dancing. It really is, because the body is moving, right? And I would challenge anybody, hey, if you're upset, do what Keya's talking about. Just get up, go to the bathroom, do what you got to do, and dance, and watch that energy start to transform. And at least it puts you in a better state on how you can, tackle the next thing. So that's a big deal. I appreciate that nugget.
Nugget. What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself along this journey so far?
To trust myself. Trust myself, and not, because there were people that doubted me and said things, right? But trusting me and knowing my ability and going deeply within myself so that I could trust myself more.
Was there ever a point where it was hard to trust yourself? Because to your point, right? Dance, affirmations, dancing in the mirror when you feel like the day's trying to beat you up or whatnot. I know, stuff I'm working on all the time, right? Like, it's one of those things to where, like, from a personal growth standpoint, I tell myself, like, no, you're gonna get this done.
Yeah.
But sometimes you gotta actually do it before you have the true ultimate, unabashed trust and true belief in yourself. Like, you gotta do it at least once.
Well, I think also though, you've done it. Maybe not in that capacity, right? You've got other victories.
Yes.
In your life.
I'm all about trying to get a win on the board.
Right. And so maybe you've not done this particular set before, but you've done other things. There's a number of things that each one of us accomplished in our lives that we can leverage and rely on. And it's very funny that we're talking about this, because, again, personal anecdote. Several weeks ago, I remember thinking, okay, this is tough, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? You've always figured out a way to do X. You've won in the past.
Amen.
You've had, when we talk about losses.
That was going to be my answer, yeah.
You've already won before. It's just in a different vein. So I want to encourage anybody, if there's a challenge or a struggle or any pain that you're going through, remember, you've already made it through a previous pain or challenge before in your life, and you could do it again. And I think that's actually what you're speaking to, and it speaks life into you. And I think that's just an absolutely amazing thing. When did growth mindset start to become more and more prevalent in your life?
Around 2015, 2016.
Oh, so you've been in the game for a minute.
Yeah, I remember being on Facebook one day, and this woman comes up, Lisa Nichols.
Yep.
And I watched.
Shout out to The Secret.
Yeah, I watched this video, and it completely changed everything in my life. And I remember shortly after I saw this video clip of her, a friend of mine invited me to a vision board party. I go to the vision board party, and this woman gets on stage and says, I was going to meet Lisa Nichols on my board, and I met Lisa Nichols. And I was like, dang, you can manifest like that? like in my head, I just couldn't believe you can do anything like that. And this, like I said, this is around 2015. And I remember going home, finishing my vision board, because I didn't finish it there. And I put Lisa Nichols on my vision board. And the next year, I met Lisa Nichols. I went to a Lisa Nichols conference in California. Didn't have money to go, really. But I was on stage dancing next to Lisa Nichols. And ever since then, I know and I believe that I can manifest anything. And I've been able to do that. When I look at my vision board now, I'm like, oh, you've accomplished all of these things on your board already. The year is not even over. Yeah. And you've had life happen, and you still have been accomplishing things. So, you know, and I was talking to my son recently. You know, he called me, and he's like, Mom, and he was upset. And I said, what have you not been able to overcome? Right? Just like you said. We always overcome obstacles, and that's what goes in my head. Even when it's a challenge, I know I can overcome this. Overcame it last time.
Speak it. So real quick, because I've got kind of a two-part question for you. And you've already kind of answered it, but you know, a lot of people hear growth mindset, manifestation, and all this stuff, and say, you know what? I hear that all the time. It's a bunch of baloney. It's BS, or whatever. But I mean, from your own personal experience, please tell the visionaries, like, yo, this is real.
It's real.
Oh, it's absolutely real. I think so. Here's the thing. It's not real if you don't believe it, and it's not real if you don't apply what you're saying about yourself and what you're writing about yourself if you're not applying that to your life, right? So I can't sit there and write all of these things down and then lay in the bed, right? Like, there has to be some movement on my end. There has to be that action, and then there has to be that belief. I have to believe that. So I can't be contrary to the things that I'm saying and the things that I'm writing and expect for it to come into fruition, because it's not going to happen. So for me, what has happened is because I believe it and because I put action behind that, then I'm able to manifest those things. But no, you can't manifest anything that you think about and you lay down and do nothing. That's not going to happen.
So second part of the question is, and it's very interesting that you said that, because around 2015, 2016 is when I really started to get into it, right? I was with a guy that was in my wedding, and the reason why he was in my wedding is because of what he had taught me, the power of writing things down. You know, and he would tell me, you know, write it as though it's already happened. And I would be intentional. I would be relentless in writing a couple of different things down. I'm going to make X amount of money this month. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I would be so intent and so intentional on doing that. And then you start to see these things happen. And so it was about that time that really drove me into this world of mindset. I read a book by Carol Dweck. You know, if anybody hasn't read that, check that book out. It's absolutely amazing. The name escapes me right now. And then really got into Tom Bilyeu and impact theory. But because of that, I often look back over the last 5 or 6 years, and I wonder, because we live in a world of fads. How much do you think, or maybe you could dispel that this is not a fad? You know what I mean? This is not just something that, you know, is hot since 2015, because you hear the word growth mindset and everybody's throwing that around, right? Manifestation, everybody's throwing that around.
Yeah, so I want to share a personal story with you. I've always written things down, not knowing that it was called manifestation at the time. Yeah. So I'll take it back. And I actually just posted this on Facebook probably about 6 months ago. I was going through my senior yearbook, and I was reading through some things that I had wrote. In particular, at the very back of my book, it talks about what you want your family to look like. It talks about what career you're going to have. It talks about what car you'll drive. It talks about all of these things. And so I went through and I'm looking at the questions and I'm looking at the answers. And I said, I'll be damned, Keya. You manifested something at 18 years old. You wrote something at 18 years old that by the time you were 25, all of these things happened in your life. And I felt that is when it was so clear to me that I had already been living that life. So it's not a fad. It's something that I've been doing all of my life without knowing that I was doing it. all of my life. As I said, I was a closet writer, not knowing this would go anywhere. Some of the things I wrote way back is in this first book.
Was there was there a moment in time as you were in this process that you had to get comfortable being uncomfortable? Because I believe in that. Like, he and I talk about all the time, right? Like, the two ex-athletes. Like, you don't get better on rep, 1 through 8 or 9. You get better at rep 9 through 15 when it starts hurting.
Yeah.
And so, you are a true artist, right? Like, as you're talking, like, in my head, all I can hear is Erykah Badu saying, I'm sensitive about my shit. That's all I can hear. But, like, do you believe that there's a certain part when it comes to growth that you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable for a hot second?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I feel like, especially when I'm about to come out with another book, that's uncomfortable for me because, Cigar Chronicles particularly, because it was a totally different genre of writing for me, and I didn't know how people were going to receive it, and so that was uncomfortable for me to be like, okay, I'm going to put myself out here in a totally different realm than I've ever done. Like, I know people like that because that's what I've been doing. They receive it. But now I'm doing something different. How is that going to be received? What are people going to think about that? That made me very uncomfortable initially. So, yeah, I think you do have to be uncomfortable sometimes. And you have to take risk as well. You have to take that risk. You have to be willing to jump. Because if you were comfortable all the time, everybody would be doing everything, right? Because you would be comfortable. It would feel good. But it's in those uncomfortable moments that you're stretched.
That's what growth happens.
So, yeah.
Before we transition, because I know where you're going, we'd like to say thank you to the good folks at Dallas Leaf LLC, the entire Army. We say Army because they're strength in numbers. If you haven't worked with them, please do. The website is DallasLeafLLC.com. The Instagram handle is at DallasLeafLLC. Whether it's cigars. By the way, Ronald, I'm out of Bishops. I got to holler at you about that. Whether it's cigars, philanthropic events, charity, entertainment, give the good folks at Dallas Leaf LLC. We promise you will not be disappointed. Give the folks at Dallas Leaf LLC.
We're talking growth mindset, and this is my space. I love it, which is really the antithesis of the show, right? You asked the question earlier about vision and how things have changed. What does the future for Keya S. McClain look like as it relates to your writing, public speaking, and things along that nature? And I know that you mentioned you're also coaching now, and I definitely want to get into that after this.
Mm-hmm. So, future-wise, I'm going to go ahead and let you all know that Cigar Chronicles 2 is on the way.
Let's go.
Come on now.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's on the way, and I'm really excited about it. It's similar to Cigar Chronicles 1, but I'm hitting on some different things.
You're proud of it, I can tell.
Yeah, I'm
when you
proud
mention
of
it, you
this
start
one.
smiling.
Now, what's funny though,
I took my time.
Okay.
I really, really kind of took some time. I had some life happenings that really kind of put me in a space where I concentrated on this particular project. And there are some dedications for this project. So this one means a little bit more.
Okay.
And, it's going to be a lot. I think it's going to be a lot more interesting.
How long does it take you, and I know that every book is different, but roughly, how long does it take you from start to finish to create the book?
Cigar Chronicles took me 30 days. That's probably the quickest that I had ever done a project.
So as you ask that question, what I'm really thinking about is when you go in your personal lab, is it one of those things where sometimes like it just flies out and you're like, oh gosh, like I got this done in
It's like
6 hours
or is it pouring out? So, Cigar Chronicles, I have to say this, it was a little bit easier because I wrote it through COVID, okay? And I was doing a live in the group that I'm in Smoking Hot. I was doing this live every week on Wednesdays. And initially, when I started doing lives in the group, it was more motivational, empowering kind of poetry. And one day I was sitting and I said, I'm going to see if I can write something about a cigar. I can write just about anything. People will say, can you write for my wedding or anniversary? Or if I can write about that, I can write about a cigar. Sure. I'm connected to a cigar. And I wrote my first poem and I shared it in the group and they absolutely loved it. Well, then every week I kept doing it and I kept getting great feedback behind it. So I wake up one morning, this was early in COVID. I wake up one morning and I said, I think I want to publish a book on cigars for the cigar community. And I'm just going to do it. And so about 30 days afterwards, the book was done and published.
Love it.
Do you write until your hands get tired, or do you write until like your brain says, okay, I've pumped out enough, give me a second to recuperate?
I write until the creativity ends in that moment. And so it can be, so sometimes I'll set a timer and I'll say, okay, you're going to give yourself 2 hours to write today. And the timer might go off, but the creativity is still flowing. So I don't limit my creativity because when it comes, it comes. And there are times where I try to schedule it and I'll be sitting there like looking at the paper's looking at me. So nothing's happening. And so I have to just trust. One of the things that I do is a notebook and a pen is in the bed next to me. I'm old school. I put everything on paper first before I put it I always put it in my notes in my phone as well. But I write everything. Everything is written down. Every single poem that I have ever written in my life is on paper. And so... Do
you have just like a stack of notebooks in your closet somewhere?
I do. It's all... And I told my son, I said, if there's ever any question... if there's ever any question, this is where all my original... And I have everything dated. So there's nothing that should be in question. I wrote everything.
I want to get into the coaching aspect. You mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, but this is that's a huge deal. As you look to help authors make their way as a creator, as an author, and get published, first of all, how can they find you?
They can go to my website, which is keyascoaching.com, and it's KEYAS coaching.com. And you can get a consultation call with me to start, and we'll see, if I'm a great fit for you. A lot of times when people reach out, they want me to actually help them do the writing. I don't help with that part.
I got to write my own stuff, let alone yours.
Will you review what they've written?
No. I will send them to someone that can help them with their editing portion. So I don't handle the writing aspect of it. I don't do the ghost writing. That's another thing that people often ask me, and I don't do the editing portion of it. So what I do primarily is I'll walk you through the process of how to upload your documents, how to make sure there's accuracy with your documents to prevent any delays with your book being published. Then from there, what I do is before the book is even released, I help with pre-launch events so that you have a successful pre-launch party or a launch party, whichever it is that you prefer. And then the next step is how to turn your book into a business. Right. So that's the final part. That's the final part of what I do as your coach.
Can you touch on how to turn your book into a business? You don't have to give the full blueprint, but give our visionaries that may be interested in, like, hey, I've been wanting to be an author, and this sounds great. I want to reach out to Keya. Like, what does that aspect look like?
So the first thing is we're going to determine what genre you're in, because let's say you're doing some expert writing and you self-publish. So let's say you write about maybe teaching a particular topic or subject. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, well, where can you go to get speaking opportunities and speaking engagements for what you just published? Because now this puts you in a trusted place. People trust authors, right? So, oh, you're an author? Okay. Well, if you're an author, can you come and speak to my team, my students, my staff about this particular topic? And so that's what I do. And for example, I have a speaking opportunity this Friday with University of North Texas. And so that's how you get those opportunities, because you're almost looked at as the professional of that. And so people want to bring you in to talk about those things and then share a part of your story. So anybody that wants to turn their book into a business, you have to also think about, how can I expand this? Because you don't want it to be like so small or even so narrow that you're not going to be able to get certain speaking engagements. I was lucky enough to where my 3-part series, I'm talking about everything from love to forgiveness to loss so there's so many different things I can pull out and maybe read or recite 3 or 4 poems and talk about this particular topic. And so, you want to just be sure that you have a vast audience that you can reach with your business, whatever book you write with that business.
Are you helping to, specific to public speaking, are you helping your client bullet point out, like, hey, these are topics that you want to cover? Like, I'm curious about that kind of process. If I got a speaking engagement in North Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Are you saying, okay, Ryan, like, this is what you're going to need to cover, or here's some recommendations on what I think you should cover during your speaking engagement?
No, I don't do that. But what I do is I help them with their proposal. So, like, I'll give them, like, an example of what their proposal looks like when they want to present to that college or that corporation. I'll say, this is an example of a proposal that you will submit that says, I want a speaking opportunity based on my book. And then from there, a lot of times you'll already know what they want you to speak about because you're going to do the research on your own end. You're going to see what kind of speakers they bring in, what kind of topics are important, and then from there you create that list. And sometimes I'll a la carte for people. I have a legal background, so that helps me to help people a little bit differently. Which gives me a little bit leverage as well because I can help them with contracts, with the proposals, with those types of things.
What about copyrights and protecting your IP?
Trademarks and all that good stuff.
So I have clients that primarily just want to work with me for that reason. They only want my help as it relates to how do I copyright, how do I trademark, and that's what I call like the a la carte. So they'll just pay me just to help them with that aspect of it.
And then last question as it relates to your coaching business, because this is what everybody wants to know. Mm-hmm. How much? And I understand that it's probably a varying degree, but expensive, inexpensive, nominal?
So I would say that it is middle of the road. That's what I would classify it at. Because, so one of the things that I didn't mention is if someone is interested in how to upload their book, to how to pre-launch an event, to, the other things I talked about with starting your business from your book, there's actually, they can just register to get all of that. It's all online. So I have an online course. So you're not really talking to me. You're not really dealing with me. You're dealing with the online course, right? So you get a login and a password, and it's at your own pace. You might be working 2 jobs. You don't have time. So you can, So you go in, you log in, and you can go in, and you can go back and forth looking at different things. And so that is less than $1,000. And then if you want to work with me, a la carte, then it's going to be hourly. And so that can range anywhere between $150 to $250, depending on what your needs are.
And you're pretty involved, heavily with the writer to make sure that they're exactly where they need to be.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure she's hands-on.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty hands-on. Even with the people who sign up just for the online course, they can call me, they can email me, and I always discuss with them, okay, let's try this. If they need, additional questions answered, or if they need a little bit more guidance, which typically happens, but it does save me time by them just being able to go to the portal and do what they need to do, and then periodically they'll reach out with their questions.
That's dope. That's absolutely dope.
Well, it is come time for us to land the plane.
Yes,
partner.
sir.
This segment is brought to you by the good folks at Grand Brulot Cognac. Visionaries, we stand on this product for a reason. It is Grand Brulot Cognac Cafe. It's BRULOT. Get to the Instagram page. Just type in Grand Brulot. It's not hard to find. Thank you to Francisco, the owner, Thank you to Jameson, the Lovers Team, everybody who's responsible for this partnership. We look forward to continuing working with you guys as things evolve with the Vision Lab podcast. So, your glass, ma'am.
I'll take it. There it is.
Yes, sir. There we go.
Have you had this before?
I have not.
Oh,
right.
get ready.
So-
Get
This will
ready.
be a treat.
Yes,
Get
this
ready, get
definitely
ready.
Is, great with coffee, great on the rocks,
Good with
great
cigar.
mixer, a lot of different mixes and elixirs that you can do with it.
Versatility is the word.
Versatility is a great word, and obviously fantastic with a cigar. So shout out to Keya McClain.
Absolutely.
Now you're just gonna sip on it,
Yeah,
okay?
you don't throw it back.
That is nice. Very smooth. I like that.
Yes.
So let's open it up a little bit. I think we should do a little word association, back and forth.
I know where you're going. Proceed, sir.
Okay, so we're gonna say a word, and I know that you're a big fan of the show, so you probably heard us do this a couple of times. We'll say a word, first thing that comes to mind, and we'll ping pong back and forth, okay? And we'll just go with the energy as it flows. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Energy,
Love.
Poetry.
Writing.
author,
Bestseller.
Pen.
Notebook.
manifest,
Dreams.
Pain.
Pivot.
vision, first word. Come on.
I was like 4 words came up. Okay, life.
Growth.
Mindset.
Love it, love it, love it. Real quickly, for all the visionaries that are still tuning in, and by the way, if you like the content that's been provided today and you're a fan of what Keya's talked about, please go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, the Vision Lab podcast, and please share it with a friend. Share it with a friend. As we land the plane, we kind of talked a little bit about vision and where you're going. I'd like for you to give, I want to give you the opportunity for you to let all the visionaries know how they can get a hold of you through all of your different social media platforms first.
Okay. So on excuse me, on Instagram, you can find me at KEYA MCCLAIN the poet. So that's Keya McClain the poet. You can find me on YouTube, Keya McClain. You can find me on my website, keyascoaching.com. And if not, you can come and find me at any of the cigar lounges, of course, and put some smoke in the air with me, and we can chat. I think that's the great way to find me.
Absolutely.
So, with cigars, how much has cigars influenced you in your current walk of life?
So much. When I initially started writing, and I mentioned earlier, the bulk of what I wrote about was pain and how to heal and how I started to forgive and live differently. But cigars have been instrumental to my healing. I can sit back, whether I'm alone at my house on my patio or I'm out with a group of people. I feel like with each puff and release, there is a release. And so cigars have been instrumental in how I'm processing pain and how I'm processing different things in life. So cigars are truly a huge part of basically my everyday life.
It's a part of who you are now.
Yeah.
We don't ask the question, what is your favorite cigar? Because people that smoke cigars know that it's all based off of your mood, your palate,
Where you are in life.
Where you are in life, what you've eaten that day. There's a lot of different things. But I'll ask it this way. What do you tend to gravitate more towards in terms of the type of cigar that you like to smoke? Are you full body, medium, mild?
That's interesting because my palate is actually changing in the last couple of months particularly. I've been leaning more towards Maduros. And I really wasn't in that place before. I was like in Connecticut for a long, long time. And now I am really starting to like Maduros. So that I'm at this really
Transitional
interesting.
period.
Yeah.
You about to hop over the fence.
It's funny too because I've always been a Maduro, more bold, rich cigar smoker, and then last year I really kind of did what you did, but I went the opposite way, and I started finding myself smoking a lot more Connecticut's, a lot more mild cigars, but it's just very fluid. And I think it's funny that you say transitioning. I may actually kind of be transitioning back towards Maduros, but we're going to celebrate Cigar Chronicles 2. What cigar are you going to smoke? When it's published, it's out, the public loves it. What are we smoking? Because we're going to manifest.
Well, I'm going to support one of my black-owned cigar lines, and I don't know which one yet.
Okay.
But I'm definitely...
If you're listening, reach out to her now.
When I smoke my celebratory stick, it's going to be a black-owned cigar line.
There it is. There it is.
So, as you know, one of the questions we ask everybody as we wrap the show up is there's a round table, 5 other seats. You get to have anybody at your table except whatever higher deity that you believe in, because that's too easy, because who would want to talk to whoever they believe in is up above.
So it would have to be my grandmother, who I just lost last year.
Sorry for your
Thank you. She's always gonna spit some type of knowledge for me, and she gonna say something funny. So my grandmother, my uncle, Tupac, my brother and best friend, and definitely a childhood friend that I haven't seen in a really, really long time, that always has something positive to say to me at a very dark time in my life.
Is that 5?
I believe so.
Grandma,
Uncle,
uncle,
Tupac,
Brother and best friend.
brother and best friend.
Yep.
And childhood friend. I've been trying to remember her name, to find her on Facebook and everything. Like, I cannot find her.
I'm going to change it up a little bit. I know that you're a fan of the show, so you may have already heard this in one of the episodes. But given that you're an author, I think it's only poetic, no pun intended,
Come on now.
that I asked this question. If Keya McClain were a book, what would be the title of your book?
The title of my book would have to be...
I love it when they have to pause and think like that.
Maybe did a good job on the question.
because I have like a couple of names in mind, but it would have to be Keys to My Life.
Okay.
I like it. All right, so final question of the podcast. I know you've heard it a ton of times. What advice would Keya McClain be giving herself from 5 years ago?
Keep smiling, Keya. Keep smiling. It does make a difference. Yeah.
Now, we're going to fast forward the clock, so forgive us. We're going to make you 5 years older. Okay? What advice is the older version of Keya McClain? What advice is she giving you in today's time?
Have more grace.
Grace for others or grace for yourself?
Have more grace for yourself, Keya. It's okay.
I like that. First time we've heard something like that before.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, first and foremost, I want to give a big shout out to our sister of the leaf, Keya McClain, for being on the show. Phenomenal author, phenomenal poet, also a coach. Super excited about Cigar Chronicles 2. Thanks for dropping that here on the show. Be on the lookout for that. Make sure you contact her, shoot her a DM, support all of the work that she's doing. Remember, visionaries, each one of our guests are dropping nuggets of wisdom on the trail of life. Ultimately, it's up to you to pick them up.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryan Mosley. He is Ryan Cuffey. Thank you again to our guest, the beautiful Keya McClain. Shout out to Jeff Davis here at the Suit Gentleman for letting us come in and work again. And we'll see you guys next week on another great episode of the Vision Lab Podcast.
I want to gift you guys your own individual copies. So there's one there, and I'm going to sign them both for you all.
Yes. But I want to do this while we're on the show. I want to buy 2 copies.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll get that set up as well. Whatever ones your first book or whatever you want to do, we want to support you. We want to buy 2 copies, and they could be the same or they could be different.
Okay. Awesome.
So again, big shout out to you. Thank you so much, sis. We're very, very much grateful for you dropping into the lab.
I appreciate you guys.
Blessings.
See you guys next week.